Thanks for coming this afternoon. Thanks for staying through the entire conference. My name's Kevin Dorr. I'm a solutions engineer in the United States for Alfresco, and I work with a partner group. And I'm going to talk this afternoon about the future, capital F future, and content management. So I'm sort of like the warm-up act for the thing that you really came to see. So hopefully this will be entertaining and brief. Can't hear? Close, like right here, directional, like this. Yeah, is that better? Okay. Okay. Well, that's a weird angle for me. Um, so, so I'm gonna talk about the future, like I said, and why it's something I really have always loved, but always kind of turns out to disappoint me. And before I do that, I'll give you this spoiler warning that this is going to reference events from a long time ago. So I'm going to talk starting about 1968. This is a picture of a movie theater in Denver, Colorado, where I grew up. It's called the Cooper Cinerama. Has anybody ever seen a movie in Cinerama? Really? Nobody? In this, John Newton's seen one. I figured you probably would have. So Cinerama was actually this really interesting technology that used three projectors projecting at the same time, and they did this actually without computer technology back then. And it made this huge representation across the wall that kind of blocked the peripheral vision. So it really sort of immersed you in the film. It was really cool. And so I spent every single day in the summer in 1968 in this movie theater. And the reason why I was there every day is because I would beg my mom to take me to watch this movie, which I still consider one of the greatest movies ever made. And I hope that all of you have seen it. If you haven't, it's certainly well worth a couple hours to watch it. And this movie it's really interesting. It's got a bunch of interesting plot things. But one of the really cool parts of it for me was that it's about the future. And, you know, when I was 8 years old, I was like, wow, the future is going to be like a really cool place to be. And in 2001, we would have stuff like this. We would have a space station. So we do have a space station, but it isn't really a cool one like this, and you can't really take like a passenger flight to it. So that was disappointing for me. And they also had this really cool thing, the moon bus. And you could take the moon bus to the moon base, and none of that happened either. So that really bummed me out too. But one of the really cool things that was in this movie were these computers. And the computers were really, really interesting in this movie. And you've probably seen or heard pictures of this computer. It's called the HAL 9000 computer. And interestingly, in the Samsung lawsuit against Apple, some of the computers that were actually made up for this movie were presented as evidence in a trial as being evidence of prior art, that they actually came up with this stuff in 1968 and Apple didn't really invent it, but they didn't get very far with that. So instead what we got for computers was we got this. We got IBM Watson. So Watson is sort of artificially intelligent up to a certain point, but it's not really intelligent in the way that HAL was intelligent. And we got this. So we got Watson on Jeopardy, which I don't know if you guys saw that or not, but it was pretty amusing. And sort of like the computer in the movie killed a couple of people, and Watson killed these guys at Jeopardy. And for Hal, well, Hal ended up sort of like that. So that was a sad fate as well. So then I heard about this thing called a personal digital assistant in about 1995. And I thought, wow, personal digital assistant, that sounds like exactly what I've always hoped for. So I thought, well, yeah, I'm going to go get me one of those. So there was really some excitement around it. But then the reality turned out to be like this. Now, here's another interesting side story. In about 1998, I actually bought one of the very first Palms, and I was going to do a bunch of development on it and had all kinds of ideas about it. And I thought Palm had actually completely gone under, but this is a picture of a modern Palm device that you can buy on Amazon today. And there's actually still a market segment for personal digital assistants. So I was really surprised to see that both of those were still around. Now you may be sitting and asking yourself, what the heck is this guy talking about? Where's he going? I thought we were going to talk about Google Glass today. So here's what I would really like to have for a personal digital assistant. I'd like to have it be able to listen to me and talk back to me, maybe. It could see what I can see and record what I can see and play it back and store it when I want to remember something. It could hear what I want to hear and also record it. It might be able to smell things and tell me if I'm in a place that there's something bad that I need to get away from. It could also see and hear things that I can't see, sort of like that weird movie with Lucy in it. And here's even some more stuff. It would be able to store and recall. It would be able to let me know about news that I'm interested in, find things on the internet, and look up things about people that I'm talking to. It might be able to give me a big advantage when I'm having a conversation with somebody that I can't remember their name. It would be able to plug into the digital economy, the Internet of Things. So the Internet of Things, if you are not too familiar with it, it's a pretty cool concept where you can pull stuff from someplace else and have it built on a 3D printer. So if I break my spine, I might need to build a new disk, you know, with some information that I can get over the internet. So that would be a short list of things that I would really like a personal digital assistant to do for me. And interestingly enough, there's something that's a pretty good start on that, which is Google Glass. But if you think about it, there's a pretty interesting pattern there. The pattern is this. The PDA would need to be able to store things. It would be able to search for things. It would be able to make connections between things. It would also be able to pull stuff back that I want to see again and work with things that are in the cloud and do that securely, and then also be able to interface with other data sources. So that's an interesting pattern that sounds just a lot like this, which is what all of us know in the room. So my point here really is that in the future, I think what's going to happen, if I hope what's going to happen, is that personal digital devices are really going to consume a lot of content management type of software things. So finally, to wrap that whole thing up for you, the future might have some really, really interesting devices. This is actually the follow-on to Google Glass, which is a Google contact lens. And it has all kinds of interesting things here. There's a solar cell to power it. There's an actual microphone built into that and a camera and all kinds of things. But what I'm really saying is that there's an opportunity for everybody that understands content management. And the people that can write an interface and be able to make it so that we can store and recall stuff and really be able to interface that into a Google Glass or that type of device that you can wear or carry around with you are going to have a real opportunity in the future. And that's the people in this room that get that technology right now. So that's pretty much my introduction. Now we're going to be able to see what we really came to see, which is Mr. Jared Ottley. So thanks very much.
Can you hear me okay? Well, let's pull it down a little bit. There we go. All right. Oh, jumped out. Oh, we opened the wrong one. It's all right. We'll get it. There we go. Let's see. Here we are. Okay. So as Kevin said, my name is Jared Ottley. I'm also a US-based Alfresco employee. I work as an engineer. I work, but mostly working with integrations, though I've worked a lot with different parts of the Alfresco platform. And currently, I'm focused on Salesforce development, on a Salesforce connector. And so this project was a nice little escape from Salesforce platform. If you've developed or worked with the Salesforce platform, you'll know that it is often quite tedious and hard. And what I want to do is talk first a little bit about the APIs, what Alfresco or what development is on the glass, in the glass ecosystem, and then move into a couple of demos, a couple of use cases that I kind of worked through as part of that. So first, what is glass development? So there is this GDK, which is an add-on to the Android SDK. So if you're already doing Android development, you're already this much closer to being able to develop applications for the SDK. Now the Android SDK gives you, and Google Glass uses all of these things, layouts, UI widgets. They use things like GPS sensors and other hardware in the Android device, or in the device that Android is installed into. Activities, services, and there's a whole lot of other building blocks that Glass takes advantage of. What the GDK adds on top of that are things like voice recognition. There are cards. This is what we call in the timeline. These are how information is presented to the user is through what we call cards. And there's a gesture detector. And there's other things that are coming. There's other things there's always these little experimental things that they have already in there. And they're just enabling them as they go along. When I first got my glass, one of the first things that they had on there was experimental is a wink detector. So they're detecting and watching eye movement to see how you move your eye and allowing you to take pictures by winking, doing that. It wasn't always very accurate, and you could be just walking along or talking to someone, and all of a sudden it started taking pictures of them, which sometimes could scare people. And then now what they have is head gesture. So you'll be able They already have a thing where as you move your head, it detects the angle at which your head is, so to know whether or not to turn it on or off. And now there's a slight gesture with your eyes. You're able just to look up if there's a notification that messages has come in or something. You can just look up with your eyes. It detects that motion and displays that message to you. So there's a lot of things that the GDK adds on in the hardware itself. That gives you access to the hardware in the hardware itself. Now the Glass Development Kit is very good for certain types of development. If you want real-time user interaction where the user is actually physically interacting with a process along there. If you need offline, if you need to be able to work with content offline, there's WordLens is an application that you find on iOS and Android, but it's also in Glass. So if you're looking for translation, you don't have to be connected to the cloud or to some sort of service to be able to do that. It provides real-time translation while you're wearing it. And then the hardware, it gives you access down to the hardware level. GPS, the cameras, the microphone within the device as well. There's also the Mirror API, and this is a RESTful API, so this allows you to be able to do lots of other types of development, and it allows you to be able to post information directly to the device. Now, and not just information, you can expand out upon that and give it whole menu commands and that sort of stuff that are able to use the Glass API to be able to do that with the device. Now the Mirror API is good because it gives you some platform independence. If you were used to developing things for like web services or Alfresco's web scripts, and you're developing with using other languages, other platforms, you can talk to Glass the same way. It provides a common infrastructure that you can kind of rely on that doesn't change. So you have the glassware, you have the services. There's what they call the Mirror Sync service. So when you're using this RESTful Mirror API, what you're doing is you're talking to Google's servers, their cloud, and then that syncs off to the hardware, to the device itself. And then there's also built-in functionality. So you can take advantage of some of the built-in commands, those built-in services that are there as part of that. So you're not, just because you're using this RESTful API, you're not excluded out from the entire Glass infrastructure. And do you have to use just one? When you're developing, are you able to use just one? And the answer is no. There's this idea of a hybrid approach where you develop this native glassware that you would install on there that can then interact with the RESTful API, or the opposite direction. You could start with the Mirror API, stick something into the Glass, into the user's timeline, provide a menu item that would then start some sort of interaction on there to be able to do something. This, I think, is the more useful, especially for the things that we do, as we think about things like workflow or other sorts of interactions that the user might have around content where we want to be able to receive input from the user, is that we would start something in Alfresco, kick something off in Alfresco, and have the user allow them to interact with that. And then the opposite direction too, they could take something like a picture that they need to be able to persist back into Alfresco, and they could send that back over, not just into Google, but they could send it over to the Alfresco API. Now, what kind of information can you send to Glass? You won't find that you can send things like full documents as they are in their native format. Glass works with images and video. Those are the primary, and then some just plain text to be able to do different things. So what you have as far as static elements are text, you have images, videos, and one thing to note about videos is that when you're sending videos to them, when you start to play them, the video itself is not stored on the device, but it actually streams it to the device. So that can do some different sort of interactions that you can take or things to think about when you do video. And the last thing is that you can kind of bundle all of those together, so you can send a whole set of information to the Glass device as one item. The other type of card is a live card, and this is more of the user interaction along with it. These would be things like, the examples we have here are things like the maps, so turn-by-turn directions. Maybe if you're in a race or you need to be able to do different things that kind of can track how long it takes to get there as you're moving along through that. And then the other type of live card, default live card, is temperature. When I got here and I turned it on, one of the cards that got turned on, one of the live cards that got turned on, was currency conversion. So I can see the actual currency conversion rate from where I'm at, because it knows that I'm not in my home location, or where I say that I live, and so it automatically provides me currency information about what the exchange rate is. There's a third type, which is called Immersion, and this is out of the cards. It actually takes the user out of this timeline experience, and they get immersed into the application that they're using. In this case, it's a game. It's a spelling game, and you're able to then use head gestures to move this. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a bubble here, and you move your head around to gestures to spell the word as part of the game. But it takes you outside of the timeline to be able to immerse yourself in there. Now, this is, I think, what people want to see is some demos of what it is that we can do with Glass. So we're going to do a couple of things to set this up. Besides just the glass, we're going to have a nice wire hanging out of the side of my head as we do this too. Okay. Yay. Turn that off. Okay, so first let's talk about what this use case is. Put that down. Okay. All right. So first thing we want to do is we actually want to publish something to Glass. And so we're going to do this from Alfresco. And we're going to take advantage of a couple of things. First, this is a document library action, so you'll be able to go to an image within the document library, and you're going to say publish this to Glass. This is going to take advantage of some work that we've done previously, like with Google Docs, to be able to use the OAuth authentication mechanisms and the credential service within Alfresco to store those, and then a repo service to be able to talk to the mirror service to Google's cloud, and the cloud then will push the content down to it. All right, so we're going to switch our view here. So we want, I think, this one. Yeah, cool. All right, so this is the Android screen monitor. So if I put this on, everyone here should be able to see. All right, you can see this, you'll be able to see. So instead of doing a screencast, which would show you guys, we get to actually see what I get to see right here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to jump into Alfresco. Move into my document library here. So I have an image in my document library. And we're going to send that image to Glass. So this is our image. We can see over here we have a publish to Google Glass. So we're going to publish this. So this is now pushing this out to Glass. We'll bring this up. We'll open my timeline and see somebody tweeted. Okay, we'll give it a second here to push because it is, there you go. So this is the image. You can see that bearded guy right there. We've pushed an image to the device. Now this is a static that now comes in here as a static item that's in the timeline. If I'd sent commands, there'd be additional commands here that we'd be able to do different things. So if we go to this email here, we could see different things and we could reply to that one. That's actually just showing as an email. But we're able to push images then to that. So it could be different ones that we'd be able to work with. on that one. So this one's actually a pretty easy example of something that we can do with glass. Bring this back up. Okay, so to do that, we've installed, there's a Google Data client that kind of wraps all of the RESTful stuff that we want to be able to do. So in this case, this is we want to get a copy of the Mirror API and pass those credentials, those OAuth credentials that we've used. We're going to tell it we're going to create a new timeline item. We get some information about that file, some file info, because we want to give it a name so it can be referenced further with further interactions with the glass. And then we're just going to insert that into that. You can see as part of this that we are getting the MIME type. So it's going to ask for the MIME type. And everything it works with static cards, if you're pushing images, not just not text, it's going to be looking for a MIME type that's image / whatever it wants to be. So you can use something like Alfresco's transformation services and be able to transform a document and be able to stick it in there. Now, a card is probably not the best place to be able to go and view, some critical document on that. You'd want to be able to resize that or be able to take that information, pull it out of the document probably, and be able to just push a snapshot of information, a summary. So it'd be good things for maybe if you have comments that are happening on a document, or workflow, or just some simpler interactions with it. And then we're able to insert through execute. All right. Now the second use case is a little bit more interesting. This is using native glassware, and we're going to use the Glass web browser then to view the image, and we're using the Alfresco share proxy service to be able to actually load an image into Glass. So in this case, what I thought of is I have 6 kids. They're quite rambunctious and like to do crazy things, and they might end up in the emergency room every once in a while. Okay, so what we do for this one, so the doctors come in, and the doctor needs to look at an X-ray, and instead of having the X-ray film that he's brought in with him, what he has here is he has a QR code that's related to that information. And so in this case, we'll go OK Glass. This is going to bring up our menu here. We can see the top one that is barcode scanner. This is going to switch us over into a barcode scanner. And now I have this QR code here. Let me take a second and we'll focus on that. We can see there, this is the UUID portion of a node ref. We've got this all in here so that you guys can kind of see what's going on with this. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the side of the glass. And now this is loading this from, as long as my IP address hasn't changed, and the network is all working. And you can see there that I've kind of... We can't see? Oh, let's see. Okay, give it a second. Really? Come on. Well, let's check something really quick. Let's see what network we're on. That would be the problem. Let's switch our network. There we go. All right. Okay. Okay, Glass. Barcode scanner. All right. Now we'll look down at the barcode. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. There we go. Okay, so there you can see that that's a UUID for it. Click on the side. Now it's loading. All right. So now the doctor has loaded this up, and you'll see here in a second as it's loading this large image. All right, so now you can see there we have part of an X-ray. Now using this, using a gesture on the side, we can use our head gesture and we can look down through this X-ray, and we can see, oh, there it is. This kid swallowed an earring. So we can hold on to this and the good thing now that it's in here as the browser is that we can keep in some compliance in that this image is now not in the timeline. In fact, using not being in the timeline, we're just closing out of the app itself. We're back to the OK Glass menu. Oh, see it, and we can move through it and see that it's not in our timeline. So now if the doctor were to take these home and lose them or something like that, none of that patient's information will be able to do that. So we can take and we can use Alfresco in a more of a hybrid fashion, or Glass in more of a hybrid fashion, to be able to grab information out of disparate services and be able to pull them in to be able to view them and interact with that content. All right. Okay, so this one, I used a project called Zebra Crossing, which it does a couple different things, but it has an Android app in it. And they've worked on one for Glass as well, just kind of a proof of concept, which is a barcode scanner. So we've added the barcode scanner in there. And then they use intents. Intents are things that you intend to do or actions that you want to be able to take. And in this case, what I'm doing is I'm taking this very nasty hard-coded URL with the username and password in it and that IP address and telling it I want to go and get this image and be able to load it in the browser. And whenever you're doing this intent action view is telling it, oh, I want to view this image, I want to be able to view this thing, and it's going to parse the URL and then be able to send it to it. You know, you could take that information, and if you have an application, then you're going to go through and you have you have OAuth layer that has to be put into the service for the glassware. It makes it a little bit more complicated to be able to do stuff. But we wanted to just prove for a proof of concept that this could work, that we could actually use Glass for a service to be able to take and give users information where they need it, when they need it, as they're going through. Last year at Dreamforce, one of the things that they showed off was the ability for just using Salesforce's Service Cloud to be able to provide information to a technician. And the technician was able to go on site and with his Glass, he was able to retrieve information, in this case, the diagram of where wires are supposed to go in an X-ray machine, and he was able to overlay the actual view of what he was seeing and be able to see this part needs to go to this place. So we can provide information to users so that they could use it in their day-to-day interactions or in their work. Now, both of these projects, I think, are both proof of concept. You'll be able to find the stained glass is what I call it for the user interaction from Alfresco, be able to push stuff. And then there's a fork of the Zebra Crossing project right there where I've provided some information about talking to Alfresco in that. All right, do we have any questions about Google Glass or Glass development? And yes, afterwards, if you want to come up and take a look at them, you're free to come up and take a look at that. Yeah, burn the side of your head. Because one of the things is they do get hot on the side, especially if you're using the barcode scanner, which is doing a lot of information. I had to change the frame rate at which it refreshed so it didn't get as hot as fast, which kind of slowed things down. But if there's no other questions, I thank you guys for coming. And hopefully you'll learn or be able to see any sort of use for wearable technologies. 3 weeks ago, Salesforce, I'm stuck in the Salesforce world, but they released a bunch of examples of wearable SDKs for talking to Salesforce for a whole bunch of different wearable devices. So it's coming to the enterprise, and they're thinking about ways of which they can provide information or transfer information from their point of view. So it's something that we as content professionals need to be thinking about as well, to be able to provide access to content in a usable fashion for users whenever they're working. All right, thank you very much. I think John has a question.
Okay, I got a question. So what sort of API should we be building to make that easier and better?
So it depends on the device. So most of the devices have some sort of cloud service. So we need to be able to communicate cloud to cloud or on-premise to cloud, which means that we also then have to have a way for us to be able to talk back into on-premise instances, which is one of the problems that we have in Salesforce development. Is we want customers to be able to customers want to talk to their on-premise instances. So we have to do that.
Some sort of
we need a proxy, which is how I describe Alfresco's cloud offering, is a proxy service to be able to talk to on-premise instances. So that's
But in terms of APIs to make it easier to integrate, anything you can think of, or everything's wonderful?
It actually is pretty easy to be able to do. I mean, the stained glass one. Now, I reused a lot of stuff that we did with Google Drive for the OAuth flow. So if you guys are ever doing OAuth stuff, the Google Drive version 2 of the Google Drive, the community version of that, is available on GitHub, on the Alfresco's GitHub page, and you can go through and you can see how we're doing OAuth. On that one, we're using Spring Social. We're using Spring Social to be able to do that one. And this one, I used Google's OAuth client, which is actually really a lot nicer than Spring's, because it does a lot of the refreshing stuff for you instead of you having to go manually do all the refreshing stuff for you. So we have to think about persistence of credentials, which we have that we have to think of, about just consuming information, what type of information we can push. A lot of the stuff, like I said, transformations is great. We can be able to do that. Being able to search is going to be great. So some types of faceted searches that we can narrow down to be able to get specific informations and be able to say, all right, I want this group of information to be able to push. Notifications, that's when Mark and I have been talking about wearables at Summit in San Francisco. It was, how do you do notification? Notifications is where we really think, somebody has an action. I looked for, there is an API for the Jawbone, but the one that I wanted to do notifications, to show off notifications, is that they don't have a way to be able to tell it to vibrate, to be able to do. But there are those sorts of things. I think from the API standpoint, we have a lot in place.
Is there maybe something around voice that we could probably be able to make it easier to be able to integrate with the voice capabilities?
Not really. A lot of it's built in, already built in. So all of the voice commands, so anything that I put in there in the timeline or anything like that, if I put a menu command in there, Google's already is already going to allow you to be able to do that. So as long as it's whatever you name it, you tell it what phrase or whatever words you're going to do, it's taking care of all that for you, so you don't have to worry about that stuff. GPS information on our as a model, we have that now in our content model. That's important, so we can track when people have accessed it, where they accessed it from, so we can know that kind of information. So it was actually not much work to be able to put those two together. So, any other questions? All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.